This BoF Live event is brought to you in partnership with Eastman Naia Renew, produced from 60% sustainably sourced wood pulp and 40% certified recycled waste plastics. Eastman Naia Renew offers innovative circular solutions at scale by creating value from hard-to-recycle materials. It can be used to create soft, comfortable fabrics for everyday casual wear and loungewear. Learn more at naia.eastman.com/renew.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good early evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Sherman. I'm BoF's Chief Correspondent, and welcome to today's BoF Professional Digital Live event. We're going to be talking about a piece that my colleague Alexandra Mondalek wrote called What Makes a Perfect Influencer Collaboration? I know you all want to know, and today Alex and I are joined by Caroline Wright Turnipseed, founder of CWT Consulting Group, Raissa, Gerona, Chief Brand Officer at Revolve, and Venita, Aspen, a content creator. And I'm so glad we have such an interesting mix of people today to discuss this, and we can give you a really holistic understanding of how to make your influencer collaborations work. So before we get started, as you know, we'll discuss the topic and then we will invite you to the stage to ask questions live. If you want to ask a question, I'm just going to explain how the Zoom questions work for us. Click the Q&A button in your bottom toolbar to send your questions straight through to us. Please use the Q&A button, not the chat function. You can use the chat function to chat amongst yourselves. I'll be checking in there. I'm sure Alex will too. We might pull that into the conversation, but if you want to ask a question live, use the Q&A. If you do agree to ask a question, turn your webcam on and your audio on so we can see you and hear you and you can join us on stage. And if you do need further help, our customer support team is available via email on events@businessofashion.com. Thanks to the team for helping out every week. So let's get started. Alex, would be really great to hear from you kind of the impetus of this story and, you know, big picture, why we decided to do it right now. And we don't have to go through all the takeaways because that's what we're going to discuss, but why did you want to write this, and what was kind of the big picture that came out of it?
Sure. So it felt like I was fielding pitch after pitch after pitch in my inbox about a new influencer brand collaboration on a weekly basis. And when I started to think about this, it really made sense for why the frequency of those emails was occurring more rapidly. And it has to do a lot with the fact that the influencer space has evolved so much in the last couple of years, where the creators themselves, from what we've learned in the reporting, are really looking for ways to deepen their relationships with brands and also dip their toes into new experiences, rather than just being the face of a brand, and maybe test their skills in other areas, which we will get into. And then from the brand perspective, the last year has been really challenging, such that as marketing budgets were looked at ever more closely during the pandemic, brands tried to figure out ways to be more efficient, cut costs. Influencers suddenly looked like, not suddenly, as they've always been really integral to brand marketing and fashion and beauty, but utilizing them in a different way, such that they were also a built-in marketing machine for a product that they believed in more wholeheartedly because they were helping create that product, really became more attractive to a lot of the people we were talking to for this piece. So that's kind of the context. And in the story, we spoke to a French shoe brand called Nomisé that was embarking on their very first influencer collaboration. It was a new product and a new experience for them. And it was also the first time that the influencers with whom they were working were doing something like this. So it was kind of just like a learning experience for all of those people. And we can talk later, of course, about how successful it was and whether they'd reached their goals. But that was kind of the gist of it. That's setting the stage.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see this market evolve, because obviously these collaborations have been around for a long time, but the nature of the collaboration is shifting. Raissa, maybe we can start with you. What is the value of partnering with an influencer on a product level, and how has it evolved for Revolve over the years?
Sure. So, in terms of, for us, evolution of influencer marketing, it's really changed so much. When we started to work with bloggers before they were called influencers, 10, 12 years ago, it really was just, and it continues to be, primarily about brand awareness. And as that relationship evolved for the last decade, we've obviously seen a massive traction in terms of influencers being able to move product. And so in terms of, why that partnership is so valuable, it truly is a built-in way to market, right? You've heard the last, call it way more than ever, 5-7 years, this word of authenticity. And that's really what an influencer can bring to the table. And so again, we've had multiple collaborations with influencers. And I think, how we continue to view them is, just like Nike has athletes, that's really how us, Revolve, as a fashion brand, views influencers. They have a massive audience. They're very, very influential in their space. And they understand how to speak to them better than, a brand potentially like Revolve. So it's been, the evolution has been incredible. And we're really excited to continue to do more of these.
Super interesting. And Venita, as a creator, I'm curious to know kind of what you want out of these types of partnerships, and also what people are asking of you who are coming to you to collaborate, things like that.
So I guess for me, when a brand comes to me to do influencer work or content creation, I prefer to step in and to be able to have a voice in the imagery and collaboration that's being had, instead of kind of being given like a script of, hi, we would like you to say these things, because it feels a little less authentic to me. And what was your other question that you asked?
It's just essentially what the evolution of what people are, when these brands are coming to you, are they asking for different things, or is their ask different than it was 5 years ago, when maybe they would just say, we want you to create this one item? Or does it feel more collaborative than it used to on their end?
Yes and no. I guess it all depends on the brand, because like there's some brands that are just like, hi, we have a new product, do with what you will with it. And like, we'll send it to us to have approval. And if we like it, cool. If not, we'll go back to the drawing board. And then you have other brands that are kind of like, hi, we have this new product. This is how we would like you to showcase it. But to me, I think it all just depends on the brand, because every brand is so different. So there's not really like a set answer for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Caroline, how have you seen the nature of these deals change in the last few years? And do you think that there are a lot of brands that aren't capitalizing on the opportunity to work more closely with influencers that could be? Oh, you're on mute. I don't know what happened. I think you're good now.
Okay. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. I think a lot of it started, you had brand collaborations of a brand with another brand, or celebrity endorsements. And now with these digital influencers, the ones that have truly established themselves as a lifestyle in their own brand, that opened up a whole nother space for brands to reach their audience. I think, like Venita's saying, brands reaching out to influencers to promote a product that they've already established or create content, that's one avenue. But taking a whole nother step of really creating a co-branded capsule is just even more immersing yourself and building that credibility and filling a gap that potentially is in your market or in your company. So I think a lot of people, you look at your overall business strategy and it's like, I'd love to go into that product category, or what if we could play in this aesthetic or target this demo? And it's not as risky as them building a team in-house, and let's work with this influencer that already has that audience and it really established there, and take her expertise and her real world insights and see what's going on in this space and how we can play together.
And, in the last few years, we're seeing really big retailers, Revolve, Amazon, Nordstrom, all come to mind, doing multiple influencer product launches, lines. Alex, can you speak to the the breakdown of how these business arrangements are changing versus, because I just did a piece on Naomi Osaka is launching a beauty line, and she's the CEO of that line. Obviously she's an athlete and a celebrity, and I'd say that every celebrity is also an influencer, if you want to use whatever term you want to use. It's a similar type of thing, but she's a part of has a stake in that business. She has a daily role in the business. She has a liaison within the company that when she can't be there, checks in with her every day and says, this is everything that what went down. It's a lot more in depth than just kind of saying what you want to do for a concept, someone else designing it, and then it rolling out. It feels like a lot of these creators are involved in the production and quality control and things like that. What have you, observed, and especially from the story of how involved the creators are becoming in the actual product development, et cetera?
So something I just want to point out that's really interesting to me that I uncovered while doing this story, kind of a little hidden nugget, was that Nordstrom isn't pursuing any influencer collaborations for the foreseeable future. And the reason they said is because they were sort of responding to their customers' desires. So whatever the subtext is there, whether that means they weren't selling anymore or as effectively, or that maybe the bigger names that had worked with Nordstrom had decided to go off on their own after developing that retail experience with them. So just wanted to point that out, that was an interesting development in the reporting. But other things that I had noticed really, it kind of depends for the influencer on which retailer they're working with. So Amazon has kind of stayed the course, for example, with the drop model, where it's sales, it's all of the benefit for the creators involved in that is tied to sales of the products, and they're only available in like short windows of time, something like 30 hours. Whereas other retailers might do, like one product to start with an influencer and see, sort of testing, or maybe they're just, trying to figure out what the merchandise should look like or what actually sells before they're really investing more of their resources in that partnership. And again, it might be obvious to some people who are listening here, but a lot of it also depends on whether that creator has management who can then negotiate for them a deal that is equitable insofar as it's tied to, like a more equitable revenue split, or, how they're able to retain the rights to their name, or whether they have some other benefit to the partnership that isn't solely for the retailer, or whether it's occurring over a longer period of time. So it just, I hate to say in any conversation, it depends, but it really does depend on the size of either the retailer or the brand. If it's a smaller brand, I think they're really willing to let a creator come in and open, especially if it's a brand that's focused, let's say, on sustainability, like Noma-Say was. They were really willing to have the Blutzstein twins, who they partnered with, come in and say, this is our supply chain, this is our manufacturing process, these are how we decide which products to use and where we're sourcing everything. Which materials to use for our products and how to source everything. So that's something for creators to consider too, and I'm sure Revolve has, a lot to say on this front, but the smaller the brand is, or the smaller the retailer is, it's possible that they're going to be willing to hand over either more of the creative reins, or at least open up, show what's behind the curtain a little bit more to the creators.
So really quickly on that Noma-Say collaboration, what was the financial structure of that deal? Were you able to find anything out about how the Bloodstein twins, sorry, I love you both. I follow you on Instagram. You're two of my favorite influencers. We're able to kind of profit from this collaboration as well.
So that was a 50-50 revenue share. When we reported on it, it had just launched, so we didn't get any of the figures to come out of that. I think eventually, they ended up selling, they only produced a certain number as well. So that's another point I'd like to make, that for any brands that are sort of testing, limiting the supply of the product itself can again sort of ensure that it's not too much of a financial risk. And, you know, we can come back to this later. I know Caroline has thoughts on making sure that there are some product minimums too, because you don't want to cut short the potential of the deal in the long run. But they pursued the revenue share at Noma Say, they told me, because they really wanted to build a sense of trust and, you know, offer some good faith with the twins. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was curious about. Venita, when you're pursuing these types of products, what are you asking for on your end? Do you want a revenue share? Do you want, you know, a fee up front? How do you structure these for your business?
My service went on a little bit. So I'm fortunate enough to have a manager that kind of steps in and handles that for me. So if a brand comes to me and they say, hi, we want to work on a capsule with you, I then pass that conversation over to my manager for her to discuss. So I don't necessarily have a big say in that.
So, but in the end, like, what would you prefer?
I prefer to have a revenue share, and then obviously like a fee just for the time spent working on it. There's never, you know, you can have 1 million plus followers and then for some reason, like you go to sell this product and nothing sells, and then you're kind of left with the short end of the stick. So just making sure that there is some type of fee for time spent is definitely necessary. And then of course the revenue shares is kind of like a little bit of a bonus to that.
Yeah, it's like getting points on the back of a movie.
Yeah.
Raissa, I'm sure it would be tough for you to kind of go into super specifics of the different deals you have with influencers, but maybe you could speak to, have you had any relationships evolve where it was a sort of one-off capsule and then it became something more in depth? And how do you kind of evaluate when that is appropriate and when it's, you know, great to just have a one-off thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the brands that we have now with influencers with Ami Song of Song Style and Camila Coelho, you know, it wasn't a one-off per se, but we were working with them for, you know, 6-7 years before we developed a brand. And so I think that again, relationship and that storytelling, that narrative to their fans as well as our customers, to let them know like, hey, this is someone that we really like working with, again, comes back to that authenticity of, you know, we like to be around each other. I think that's really, really important. I don't think a lot of brands or influencers think about that when you are doing a capsule or a longer collaboration, it's a lot of time spent together. I always look at this as like going into a relationship. I think I said that to Alex when I did the interview. It's like your dating is kind of like, you know, doing some events together, seeing how a post performs, do they drive traffic, like really getting to know the influencer and what they're good for. I mean, for us, like every influencer that we have in our network, which is over 7,500 people that we work with, we value in some capacity because we know that they are doing something. Again, whether it's driving traffic, whether somebody drives traffic and converting, whether they're doing that in a specific, part of the world, obviously Revolve ships globally. And so there's really a lot of kind of nuances to figuring out if somebody kind of has, crossed over to a capsule collaboration kind of relationship or situation. But it's a lot of getting to know each other and really getting to know that influencer's customer base and what they can really do, we can do with each other. And a lot of times that just takes time. I think a lot of brands too really look at, working with an influencer as like, if they posted one time and nothing happens, they're just like, this relationship is like, it's more like, it's not worth anything, forget it, and it's like, it's the consistency that is important. And that's something that has been absolutely instrumental to Revolve's success, whether it's, just not having a capsule or obviously these longer collaboration deals.
Caroline, do you find that's a really good point about spending time? And what I've heard from a lot of brands more recently, this is obviously there are different words, micro influencer, macro influencer, a million different ways you can describe people with different audiences. But what I am seeing from a lot of different types of brands is that they really are starting, they're trying much harder to meet with the influencers who make sense for their brand depending on what size they are or what have you. Caroline, are you finding that brands are more open to influencers with different audience size because they understand that the impact of a smaller audience might be greater than a larger audience if the brand influencer fit is correct? And do you see that kind of coming into play when these product lines develop?
I think absolutely. I think it goes back to the intention and what that goal is of what they're trying to achieve with the collaboration. If it is, mass awareness, when you're looking at a size, going to an influencer with a larger following is what's going to make more sense. Just when you think of, we can get 10% of her followers to convert, it just gets much smaller with what piece of the pie you can get as a new customer when they have a smaller following. But if it's much more to open up to a new market, regionally or globally to a different, country or continent, that micro influencer can be especially successful since she's so well known to that target audience. And also, if you're going to, the brands are looking to launch a different product category or a different aesthetic, the micro influencers are going to be more cost effective as well to try out that in a smaller way and see what the appetite was without shifting your entire brand into a different strategy. It's a great way to test and see what the appetite is.
Yeah, I feel like, and I know we're talking about product development and product lines today, but one really good example of something that worked on me was the Hermes clog launch. They worked with a lot of influencers, but they were very specific. And a lot of them you wouldn't even consider influencers in the traditional way. That's not, their business. Maybe they were artists or chefs or what have you. But I noticed and went to the ends of the earth to buy a pair. So it worked. It worked on me. And it would be interesting to see a brand like that do an actual product line with an influencer.
Really authentic. And I think in the world of, fashion bloggers, which I feel like is what most people think of when we say the word influencers, reaching out to someone that is a chef or an interior designer or has more of a niche, it's more refreshing on their feed when it's not, you're used to them saying every day, buy this top or this is what I like. And it's just this refreshing and it comes across much more impactful.
Yeah. So let's talk about the product itself. Obviously, a lot of these lines are apparel lines. Alex, maybe you want to talk about what kinds of products seem to, resonate with consumers in this market, and are there any particular collaborations that you think had a really unique point of view that we should mention right now?
That's the $1 million question. To be honest, it's been a while since I've seen something that had a unique point of view. But what I will say that I've noticed more generally is that if a brand is interested in working with a non-obvious influencer, so for example, like maybe this creator focuses more on fashion, but they talk about their mental health a lot. Maybe it's a product or it's a collaboration with like a candle company to, talk about like how they're unwinding at the end of the day, or just as a really broad example there. So are there other ways to think about what that creator is talking about on their profiles or with their audiences? It can be maybe they're really into cooking or some other, area in the lifestyle space, or it might be a product that, if they are in a specific location. For example, if they're in Los Angeles and they've picked up surfing or they're spending more time at the beach, maybe it's a collaboration with a swimsuit brand, but you're not necessarily going to tap a creator who is in a much colder climate to sell bathing suits, right? If that's where their audience also exists.
Raissa, how do you kind of figure out the product mix and the merchandising for these things? What can you talk a bit about the process that you go through with each collaborator?
Sure. I mean, for us, it's really, really important to obviously make sure that the influencer is super duper involved. Whether it's, in the beginning of the design process, a lot of them, obviously before the pandemic, they were traveling so much, and so trying to figure out how to fit into their schedule and how to do the fittings, and you'd be surprised because they are wanting to be very, very involved in the process. But Revolve, I mean, is a very data driven retailer as well, and so for us it's very important for us to share that information with them, to let them know, hey, this is what's moving really well, this is what we see is trending, and kind of truly collaborating from that perspective, a data sense of like what their customers are looking for and what our customers are looking for, and trying to mesh that together. Also, very similar to what Alex is saying, what category is, are they really known for? I think Camila Coelho is great at, and I think, Something Navy with Ariel did this pretty brilliantly in the beginning when she was doing a collaboration with Nordstrom's, was just constantly asking her fans what they thought about everything. Like, what about this color? Should I do this? Should I recolor this? Should I cut this again? Should I do kids? Like constantly. And I think for us, having that as like the piece of data from the influencer, backing it up with what our customers are actually looking at on Revolve, has been pretty phenomenal.
That reminds me, Raissa, of how Kim Kardashian talks about her product development, which is like she feels like she has a live testing feature on her Instagram when she was developing Skims. She's talked about that a lot in interviews. So I think that there may be a balance between, maybe it would be more beneficial from a marketing point of view, to sort of building that anticipation with the audience, the influencers, really engaging the audience so that they feel like they're just as invested as the actual influencer is in creating that product, so that when it finally does emerge, it either surprises the audience, maybe it didn't look exactly how they thought it would, or it looks exactly like they wanted it to, and then, they're more compelled to purchase.
And I also would say another great thing for brands that don't have as much data as someone like Revolve, these influencers have years of data from reward stylers, shop styles. So when you have that letter of intent to collaborate or a contract sign, having them open that up and what their top 10 products were that they sold. Can they convert at a $200 dress? Can their customers convert at a $1,000 dress and have no price sensitivity? And just having that knowledge for so many different brands and price points and what aesthetic works is really invaluable.
Yeah, I actually want to add too, sorry, one more thing is like for brands, like I think that's a great point. I mean, we do this too. It's like before you even have that letter of intent and you have an interest in someone, get in like a 3-month, contract with them, see what kind of products they can push. And then from there, make that decision of like, oh, wow. Like as Caroline was saying, like, you've proven to us that you can move this product, because a lot of times, beforehand, a lot of influencers are like, I'm not going to do this because I'm, you have to pay me because I can move a lot of product. And so, kind of put your money where your mouth is and show us. And I'm willing to pay for that information before I engage in any further kind of bigger long-term contract. And that's absolutely necessary if you're, again, investing a ton of marketing, a ton of inventory on somebody, to just get a gauge of what they're able to really convert on.
Yeah, Venita, I'm curious to know from you. I know you have some things in the work. I don't know how much you can speak about them, but any specifics. But what's your process with this? Are you kind of pulling from your audience first, or are you kind of coming up with the concepts and thinking about what your audience would, how when you're developing product, is the audience playing into what the end result is?
Basically, to speak on what you guys were just kind of going over, like I always make sure that my audience is involved with anything that I'm doing, especially product development, because I feel like if I don't include them, then a product won't move. Because if I'm only 5'4" and an extra small, and I have 15% of my audience that is an extra large, and they're maybe like 5'6", I just can't make clothes for me. I have to make clothes for everyone. So making sure that like Raissa was saying, like asking those questions like Ariel did, like, okay, what color do you want? What size range do you want? Like, do you guys prefer this fabric versus this fabric? Do you want kids? Like keeping them involved is, I think, the best way to push a product and push it well.
Yeah, this, really, to me, it speaks to, it's not just about influencer collaborations, it's how you build a brand today. Glossier, there's so many direct to consumer companies that talk about this Stitch Fix, where they really use a lot. It's not just data, it's, anecdotal, it's qualitative, it's not just quantitative data that they're using to really inform what the line should look like and what they should be offering. And then it's the creative person, whoever that is, the influencer or Emily Weiss or what have you, who is kind of making that come to life. So it's, I think, a good lesson, not just for these sorts of collaborations, but brand building in general in this era. Really quickly, and we did talk about this a bit, but Alex and Caroline in particular, I thought maybe you could break it down. What are the different, we talked about the Nomase partnership, Venita talked about how she likes to work with brands, but what are the different financial kind of setups that these collaborations can look like, and what is the most popular way to do it right now? Obviously there's the 50-50 split, or getting the revenue afterwards, but there are so many different ways that these business deals are structured. Alex, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so again, it just sort of depends on the size of the retailer or the brand, and the creator that they're working with to determine which structure is right. But they can offer a flat fee, which might include everything. It might be a series of flat fees, right? Like it might be a creative consulting fee or some built in like marketing fee. So generally speaking, a flat fee. Then there are licensing deals, which Caroline, I'm sure, has a lot of thoughts on. I will let her speak on that. And then again, sort of the revenue sharing structure.
Yeah, I'm super curious about the licensing deals, because that felt like, I'd say 2014, 2015, how a lot of these partnerships were happening. And then it felt like to me that the influencers with a lot of pull were not as interested in that as they used to be. Caroline, do you see that? How do these licensing deals typically work? And is it still a prevalent way to set up one of these?
And for anyone listening that's not as familiar, I've brokered deals from the influencer side and the brand side. So it is a unique perspective, just so people understand the context. But I would say the licensing deals make sense when it was more a brand with another brand. Usually licensing deals are a much smaller percentage, 10, 15%, and focused on gross profits. But when you really have an influencer coming that's contributing substantial amount of marketing, their name on it, and really making thoughtful decisions that are affecting how the product and collection will sign, I really recommend the profit share. It's just collective responsibility for both partners in mind, and really genuinely makes sense that way. If they want to buy more or sell more afterwards, the skin's in the game on both fronts. One thing, like Alex had mentioned, that on the influencer side of things, I see a lot of individuals get excited about the 50-50 profit share. On their side, that's a lot of potential money. They don't have to deal with inventory upfront costs, shipping, delivery, and putting up a site. But a lot of individuals forget to put some kind of minimum spend to there. So when it comes time to order, if there's only one SKU and it's a smaller brand, the potential units, even if it sells out, just isn't that substantial. So always make sure, when we're signing that letter of intent, that minimum is discussed, so it makes sense to move forward and talk further. And then whether it's a true 50-50 profit share or a 30-70 or 40-60, I think it really depends on what the collection looks like, how it's going to be marketed, and what's going on to launch it. So if the influencer is committing to meet and greets, creating a photo shoot, being a model for it, so many different posts, that's definitely merits, a 50-50 if they're a substantial amount. If, on the brand side, they're willing to put a substantial digital marketing campaign and ad dollars behind it, then it could shift, accordingly, just really keeping in mind what, the full picture looks like. I think it's also important for influencers to always ask about affiliate commission on other products. So even though they're getting 50-50 on their collaboration, the hope is on both sides, they're referring traffic to that brand's website, but they're buying other products from them that don't have, the influencer's name on it. So making sure that they're getting some kind of kickback for that referral during the launch time, if that's an opportunity. So I just think there's so many different ways to achieve your goals through influencer collaborations. And so you really need to lay that out at the beginning before figuring out the right financials. I think also, like, if the influencer is willing to open up their Instagram for the brand to run ads and reach their audience and have access to that API, like, that's just another huge value that they can add that should be discussed beforehand, so that the parties are being paid in the right way.
I talked to an executive at Reward Style for another story that we have in the pipeline for BoF, and something interesting that they said to me, and I sort of known, I guess, anecdotally, but it was interesting to hear it coming from them, was that consumers really do refer to talent by their handle on whatever platform they're most proficient, So I know that the example with Gal Meets Glam is a little bit tepid, just because she had engaged in a licensing deal, and then the deal kind of over time was not something she was interested in continuing, and had to give up that moniker. And we talk about that a bit more in the story, but it's definitely worth considering, especially if the influencers moniker on their social media handle is something like cute and cheeky, and it has a lot of marketing value behind it, but they might not necessarily want to turn over the rights to that totally to the brand or the retailer.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like all these designers who lose the rights to their names, and either have to start over again with a different brand, or have to buy it back, and it can get very complicated. But in this case, it tends to be the handle, which is so interesting. Raissa, I don't know if you can speak to specifics on these deals that you have, but is there anything that you don't do in terms of working with influencers? And do the deals that you do vary on a case-by-case basis, or do you have kind of a standard way that you do these collections specifically?
They definitely vary depending on, so many things. Obviously, the length of the relationship, kind of the investment that both the influencer, as Caroline was mentioning, is making in terms of the deliverables as well as Revolves. I do see that, in the last, I would say 3 to 4 years, that influencers are very, very keen on, owning, at least half of the brand, very similar to the format that you mentioned with Naomi Osaka, of making sure that she has a massive skin in the game and that she's running the company. I mean, very similar to like a Miranda Kerr and her beauty brand, right? So I do see, like, the various kind of forms in terms of whether it's a licensing deal or, again, a kind of a 50-50 ownership split. But it is constantly evolving, in a sense that the influencer wants to be very, very involved and wants to either be like the chief brand officer or the CEO, which I think is really, really phenomenal, because, again, it allows them to be very involved in so many ways, and allows them to really share that story on their social media platforms even more if they are carrying, a C title or a co-owner or an owner title. So as a brand, we love that, because, again, they just are able to kind of freely promote what they're doing, even more than what their the stated deliverables were on that deal.
Something I wanted to point out just really quickly, I'm thinking about things that have changed since this story first published, Lauren. And the news that Facebook is going to allow influencers, they call them creators, to have their own creator shops on their Instagram profiles is, I think, something really interesting that both the brands and people brokering these deals should be paying attention to, because if the, again, the tool hasn't, or the availability of that feature hasn't rolled out just yet, but once it does, how does that drive the sale either to the brand itself, or should a different affiliate structure be pursued? So again, that's something for anybody interested in pursuing these kinds of deals in the next 6 to 12 months to keep their eye on as that develops.
Yeah, are there any, Venita, I want to hear from you on what looks attractive to you with these kinds of things, and what is a turnoff when a brand comes to you asking if you want to do these things. But before we get to that, really quickly, are there any brand accelerators? You know, in beauty, there's Seed Beauty, there's all these different companies that sort of, if you go to them and you say, I want to start a line, they can develop it for you. That's the same case in Europe, and in fashion, there are all these brand accelerators that are building brands for creators. Or is there anything like that for influencers in particular, and that are in the more apparel or shoe space? I would be surprised if there hasn't been something that has kind of emerged so that you can sort of do it on your own in a different way. Does anyone know? No. Well,
I feel like
think
there's,
that could,
I mean, in some capacity, Revolve is, very
Yeah.
much like, I mean, we have, 25 brands that we own and operate. So the manufacturing, the production arm is there with a built-in retailer, which I think is obviously great. I think, Good American, I don't remember the company name, but they are partners with the people I think who own Frame Denim, and Emma, and she
Yes.
runs Skims as well as, so I feel like there's different variations of that. And I know you mentioned Seed, but I think, for fashion, not unlike, but kind of unlike beauty, the amount of new styles that you have to produce, I think the investment is significantly more, because I think with beauty, if you have a mascara or a lipstick or a face wash that just blows out, it's just the same kind of formula for forever. Whereas with fashion, you're just constantly having to drop new product, which I think it's just a bigger investment.
Yeah, so
And
you really
I think
need to
just
have that
overall,
infrastructure.
VCs find influencer brands, those that have proven themselves, or not even influencers, brands that started in this digitally native space, whether it's like a glossy, extremely appetizing. And you talk to friends in that space, and I've heard it said, like the next Ralph Lauren, the next Tory Burch, that lifestyle brand, very confidently they think it would come from someone that started in that digital space that can connect to consumers on that level and have that authenticity.
Lauren, that sort of ecosystem, the sort of like incubator accelerator for influencers to turn into brands, is really prevalent in China and the Chinese market. But something worth noting is that consumers there don't necessarily always believe everything they're being hit with constantly in that KOL market. So a lot of that ends up becoming very recommendation based for the consumer. So just because you're part of that accelerator program, or you're able to sort of turn out a brand pretty quickly in that market, doesn't necessarily mean it will be successful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Venita, when you, as I mentioned before, when brands are coming to you, what are you kind of turned off by? What excites you in terms of these types of partnerships? What should brands be telling the creators or influencers that they want to work with so that they say yes?
Okay, so first, I think that the brand should definitely do research, which I know seems like a no-brainer, but I can't tell you how many times I have been approached to do a hat collab, and I'm like, guys, I can't put a hat on this hair. It's like, it's kind of disappointing because I'll be excited about the brand, but then I realize I'm like, okay, guys, you've literally done no research on me prior to asking me to do this collab with you. So I think from a brand perspective, do as much research and digging as you can. As an influencer, we literally put our entire lives on Instagram, so it's not that hard to find out a little bit about us before reaching out. And then secondly, I think what I look for the most from a brand is the collaborative aspect, because again, I know that's all dependent on brands, on what brand I'm working with, but I can easily tell like when I'm sent an email if it's going to be a collaborative situation, or they're kind of more like, we want you to make X, Y, and Z, and it has to be this way. That's kind of like a huge turnoff because it feels less authentic. And with the space being so oversaturated, I guess is the best word to use, being sure that you're authentic to your audience is like number one important to me. And when a brand is reaching out and they just kind of spit at you like, we want X, Y, and Z, it's like, how is that authentic to my brand? Because you're telling me what to say. Like, you can do that yourself. Like, you don't need me for that. Like, you need me to make it to where your audience is excited about whatever new product is being launched. And the best way that I, as an influencer, can do that is by speaking to that product in my own way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I'd echo what Venita says too about brands just coming to influencers. One thing that I was shocked when switching to represent influencers, brands would come and say, this is our proposal. We want 3 Instagram posts, this Instagram story. And it'd be like, wait, they didn't even tell us what the goals were. And they don't know that her blog is what refers all the traffic. And there's this amazing newsletter that has the highest open rate that I've ever seen. But I mean, sure, if that's what they want, but not really taking the time to see where their audience convert and engages and say like, this is what we're trying to achieve. What do you want to bring to the table? How do you want to communicate this is a much better way to go about that and immerse each other in both worlds, and can't learn everything about each other from like a 1-pager brief.
Yeah. And like, I feel like as a type of influencer I do better with sales when I can create a beautiful image versus just holding a product or having it sit next to me. Like, that does not do well for me. My audience does not like when I do that. But if I can tell a story through like beautiful imagery and setup and like how to, then a product will fly. And like when brands come to me and they're like, oh, can you just sell this one hair product? And I'm like, no, I can't, because I can't convert it the way you would want me to, So it just becomes, you just have to make sure that the brand has an understanding, like Caroline says, of like how you sell best versus what they necessarily want from you.
Yeah. Venita, I'm curious, is your audience engaging differently with like loungewear? Are they asking for more loungewear recommendations right now? Or is it, because I just took a look at your Instagram and it's so beautiful and colorful, but a lot of like the, I don't want to say like going out clothes, but like things you would wear out in public versus wear in your home that are more comfort oriented. Are you noticing a shift at all in what your audience is engaging with or asking for recommendations for?
Not really, because I didn't post, and I don't post a lot of loungewear. And if I do, I still try to like dress it up so it's not just like at home loungewear. So I didn't really see like any change in that, just because it's not something that I do well with. Like, I love to wear jeans and like dress up and like go out. So like, even when we were in the house, like I got dressed up almost every day.
Good. Okay. I was just curious because we're having a lot of conversations about what a post-pandemic style or dressing looks like. So I was curious, but
I feel like some pieces will be, sets are always good, but I think from the loungewear perspective, adding like a fun pullover with jeans and like that pullover being like that soft loungewear piece will probably sell better moving forward than an entire set.
Yeah, it seems like our next digital live should be about what people are wearing post-pandemic. Really quickly, and then I want to open it up to questions. What are the risks for both brands and influencers associated with these partnerships? Raissa, you have over 20 partnerships, so your portfolio is diversified. But when it doesn't work out, what happens? Like, how do you manage that part of it? I'm sure not every single one has been the breakaway hit that Ami or some of the other collaborators have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's really just having those conversations. And of course, it's tough. Nobody wants a breakup. I keep referring to this as a relationship, but that's really what it is. But I think, it's just having, again, that conversation of like, hey, we didn't meet the sales or just goals that we were trying to, or oftentimes even on the opposite end of just, we didn't really enjoy working together. Sometimes like the sales are actually pretty solid, but it was just very, very, challenging to get things done, to get a post, to do, again, to just start to check off those deliverables. And, when we started embarked on this journey, again, 7-8 years ago, really having these capsule collections with influencers, we've learned a lot. And, we want to continue to invest in people who understand the business side of things, who are professionals, and who will kind of come to the table with not just what they've signed up for, but hopefully, a little bit more, if not a lot more. So, we kind of have a whole new perspective on what a working relationship and what a successful relationship entails. But we've had to definitely, cut short or leave collaborations and not renew them for those reasons. And that's just full transparency.
I wish that more brands would be transparent with that, because from the influencer perspective, like you work with the brand and you get excited and like for me, at least the number one goal is to make sure that a brand that I'm working with, I can work with them 3 or 6 months at a time and it not be just like a one-off situation. And I recently had happened literally last week, a brand that it just kind of like fell through the water. They never sent me product. I had to go out and buy it myself. And then when it came to me turning the content in, they were displeased because product was missing. And a simple fix is, just having the conversation of like, okay, I suggested that you guys submit product and they wouldn't send it. So then that came to the situation where it was just like they were displeased. And then when I tried to approach them to chat about it, no one wanted to have an open conversation. So it's like making sure, that the breakup is mutual versus one-sided is is very important.
For sure.
And I think also, like Raissa keeps saying, date before you get married and do a collaboration. That's the best way to de-risk it. Right away, is it going to refer traffic? Does it come across as an authentic relationship? And is this the audience we want to bring in as new consumers? And then there's not that surprise of, that collaboration didn't work, no one converted. And you would have known that already if you just had made the investment to test it beforehand in some kind of content way.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. It just means doing a little extra work, which is easy for some people, hard for other people. So I do want to open it up for at least one question. We have Lee from London who will be joining us. And nice, we're an American audience. We're an American panel today, so good to have some global. Thanks for bringing up the China point, Alex. I'm sure our audience was really appreciative of that. That's super interesting to me. Lee should be here any minute. Hello, Lee.
How you guys doing?
Hi. How are you?
Thanks.
I'm good. Good talk, by the way. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
Shall I go? Yeah, well, a little bit about myself. I'm a digital merchandiser at Nike in the Netherlands. I'm currently situated in the UK though. But yeah, the main question was, how do you tackle sort of the teen consumer and the teen influencers? Because I think that's sort of like the vital point where like sort of the teenage girl, sort of the teenage boy, like is influenced by their surroundings and the people on social media in such a big scope. And I don't think it's really, I look online and I don't really see like the blueprint of really how to sort of tackle that sort of consumer. So just open question to you guys.
It's a great question. I can't wait to hear what everyone thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll speak on Revolve's behalf, of course, but for us, even though we focus a lot on the millennial female consumer, we're constantly and we have to, I think every single brand, you have to stay young. Like that's just, you have to stay relevant. And so we're constantly looking at, of course, younger kind of Gen Z influencers, and what's been so, amazing. And I think a lot of brands, maybe I get asked this all the time of like, it's so saturated, like, what do you do? And for us, we see that as an opportunity. That means there's way more influencers out there that we can work with. And with the rise of TikTok in America, especially, a whole slew of like influencers that are younger, that are able to connect to a different type of consumer in a different way, in a more authentic, fun way, I think, to quite frankly, than Instagram. It is so exciting. And so we're really focused on, for that younger consumer to be on TikTok. We have, somebody on the team that focuses specifically just on this segment, on this younger consumer. And so I think as, I don't know if that answers your questions, but, as much as teenagers are definitely influenced by other people, the narrative and the kind of takeaway here is they are still influenced, and they are on social media significantly more than any other person. So I think that's really where you need to start.
I think the other thing to add that's so great about influencers with teenagers is there's a lot of restrictions with any kind of digital paid ad to people under age 18. So you can't target specifically that. And with influencers, you can assume and see their data that is following as a younger generation and reach them in that capacity.
I was going to also make a point about TikTok, just that for any of the sort of like fashion or lifestyle influencers or younger creators on that platform, what I've noticed about a lot of the fashion content that does well, and maybe it could be a consideration for a future product down the line, is what story does that product tell on, what narrative can you craft around it? So is it like a DIY sort of thing if it's an accessory, or even like a sweater that, something like that, or does it like evoke some sort of like 70s vibe that I'm thinking of, like Wisdom 8 is the handle on TikTok. See, I'm using the handle again, but so this creator sort of like creates an entire arc of content around a pair of flared pants. And so just to think about, again, what kind of story a product is telling, or what kind of influencer would best sell that on TikTok, I think is interesting to a teen audience as well, who's really proficient there.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really important point. I think, we don't talk about TikTok in this space, or as much as we should, or these newer platforms. And just to wrap it up, I'd be curious to hear from all of you, what do you think the future of this segment of the market is? Do you see, Caroline, you mentioned that some of these brands could become, multi, $100 million, $200 million businesses, potentially the next $1 billion business, if that even ever exists again in apparel. But what else do you think? What's the evolution of these product lines? Raissa, what are you looking at, focusing on, and as you look further ahead in the next couple years in terms of how you work with these creators, and how that may look different than it does now?
I'm like, Caroline, I don't know if Caroline wants to go first, or
go ahead, or I can jump in.
I think for us, influencers and just whatever you want to call them, bloggers, influencers, celebrities, will always be part of our marketing. I think, since kind of like the beginning of fashion, especially, right? What I said this, I think, to Alex too, when we interviewed, is like, first it was like editors, and then, it just constantly evolves. Celebrities are always, sport athletes always, right? But it's the platform that constantly changes. For us, we've seen the growth between, first on blogs and Facebook, MySpace, Facebook, and now TikTok. So Pinterest is also very exciting for us. So I think for us, it's always going to be a part of what we do, because it's the best way to communicate with people so many times a day, without feeling spammy. That's the easiest way I could say this. And that's how we can't send that many emails in a day. There's no way we can't send that many text messages in a day to our customers, but can you have 500 to 1,000 influencers post about you in a day potentially if you were having a big campaign? 1,000%. And so for us, that's 1,000 billboards with potentially 100,000 followers each. That's massive. It's more than a Super Bowl ad, So that's how we're always gonna, play this, I guess, game in terms of marketing is go to the people and go to the person that can communicate an emotionally deep connection with people. It's just the way that we have to market forever. I think it's the platform that will constantly evolve and change, and we just have to be on top of it.
Completely agree with that, especially the scalability piece. I think, Lauren, for your question about where is this going, these influencers that make these product collaborations, and I think it's the ones that can truly establish themselves as a brand with competitive advantages and can provide and pivot, be a true retailer and provide that customer experience and have the right team to help them transition from a digital platform to a retailer. And that's easier said than done. But just that sweet spot of it's still aspirational, yet comes across extremely attainable to their followers. That's what every brand wants. And that they have created this authentically in their platform is just so rare. And the future is extremely bright once you've unlocked that. I do think it's interesting to watch influencers as they become more of this lifestyle brand. How do they scale it that it's not necessarily that it's their face and them that has to be in every image, and how do they really illuminate that lifestyle into other product categories and ways that they can not have to be the model in every shoot, and for more of a business role. And I think those that can unlock that strategy is who will grow to be hundreds of thousands, $billions.
Alex and Venita, do you have anything else to add to that?
I'll let Venita take it if she wants.
I don't. I mean, I think you two literally hit the nail on the head. That was perfect.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Venita, Raissa, Caroline, Alex, of course. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and thanks to the BoF team, as always, for putting these together. We actually have another BoF Professional live on Thursday about the future of Sephora and kind of breaking down that business with our colleague Chantal Fernandez. I'm super excited about that. I find Sephora endlessly fascinating. And thanks to the audience, we appreciate you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email Alex or me at firstname.lastname@businessoffashion.com. And I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening or wherever you are in the world. Bye. Thank you all.
So much. Bye.